The young and the restless spoilers. Nick's heart pounded as he raced down the dark, deserted streets of Genoa, his mind fixed on the chilling clues that had led him here. The white pickup truck, a seemingly innocuous vehicle that, moments ago, had been used to abduct Phyllis and Sharon, had become the catalyst for a series of events too sinister to ignore. In a matter of minutes, everything had spiraled out of control. Phyllis and Sharon, both vulnerable and terrified, had been mercilessly locked inside the truck's cargo area, their fates hanging by a thread as the vehicle sped away into the night. Determined to rescue the captives, Nick meticulously followed every lead. His instincts told him that the truck's trail ended at a place that sent shivers down his spine, a long-abandoned hospital on the outskirts of the city. This decrepit building, its walls steeped in grim memories and shrouded in whispered legends of countless lost souls, was notorious. Over the years, rumors had spread that anyone daring to step inside its dark corridors would be swallowed by a curse of misfortune and death. It was a location that few ever dared approach, a place where the echoes of past tragedies still resonated with every creak of the floorboards. As Nick arrived at the hospital's rusted gates, he could sense that something was terribly off. Shadows danced in the flickering light of his flashlight as he made his cautious way through the overgrown grounds. The silence was deafening, a silence so complete that every distant sound, every rustle of wind through broken glass, seemed to signal the approach of danger. And then, in a moment that made his blood run cold, Nick encountered a figure in the gloom. It was Martin. Martin's presence here was as unexpected as it was infuriating. Standing tall amid the encroaching darkness, he exuded a dangerous confidence. His eyes, cold and calculating, locked with Nick's in a silent challenge. "Why are you here?" Nick demanded, his voice taut with anger and suspicion. The question was loaded, for Nick was acutely aware that Martin's involvement meant that someone had compromised a critical location. Every second counted, and time was running out for the innocent lives still trapped inside the pickup truck. But Martin's response was nothing short of maddening. Adopting the guise of Alan, a persona he had used with reckless abandon, Martin offered a laughable excuse. "I'm just here to have some fun," he sneered, his tone dripping with false cheerfulness. The lie was transparent, and Nick felt a surge of revulsion. It wasn't merely that Martin was in the wrong place at the wrong time, it was that he had deceived everyone with his duplicity. In that instant, the stakes escalated beyond repair. The abandoned hospital was no longer just a creepy relic of the past, it was a battlefield where secrets, lies, and desperate lives collided. Before Nick could press further, a blood-curdling cry for help echoed from deep within the hospital's basement. The anguished sound was unmistakable, a desperate plea from someone trapped in the shadows of the forsaken building. Without a second thought, Nick's instincts surged to the forefront. He needed to act, to check the source of the scream and rescue whoever was in peril. Every second of hesitation could spell disaster for an innocent soul, and his determination grew with each echoing cry. However, as Nick prepared to descend into the basement, Martin's voice rang out with an unsettling finality. "No, you're not going down there," he declared, his tone leaving no room for debate. "This is my house now." The words cut through the tension like a knife. Martin's possessive claim over the abandoned hospital was both baffling and ominous. It wasn't merely a building, it was a fortress for someone whose intentions were as murky as the darkness enveloping them. If Nick was forced to yield to this twisted claim, it would only open the door to further chaos and bloodshed. A volatile standoff erupted between the two men. Nick's eyes narrowed as he met Martin's defiant gaze. He knew that yielding even a fraction of ground to an enemy like Martin would be tantamount to surrender. "I'm not backing down," Nick growled, his voice a low promise of retribution. "If I let you stand in my way, if I allow you to hold innocent lives hostage, then I lose. And I will never be the one who gives in to cowardice or deception." Martin's smile twisted into something sinister, a predatory smirk that hinted at the depths of his malevolence. His earlier charade of playing around was now replaced by a cold, calculating menace. "You really don't understand," do you?" he hissed, the name Alan echoing in his tone as he clung to the false identity. "I'm not here to lose anything. I'm here to control what's mine, and that means keeping every secret under lock and key." His words carried an unspoken threat. The abandoned hospital, the pickup truck, and even the anguished cry for help were all pieces in a dangerous puzzle, a puzzle that Martin was determined to solve on his own terms. As the confrontation escalated, the tension in the musty air thickened. Every shadow, every creak of the old building seemed to conspire with Martin, as if the hospital itself were a silent accomplice in his schemes. Nick's determination only hardened. He knew that if he allowed himself to be bullied by Martin's deceit, he would be abandoning not only his own principles but also the lives of those relying on him. The stakes were too high, the consequences too dire. In a swift, instinctive decision, Nick moved to secure the perimeter, his eyes scanning every darkened corner for any sign of further danger. But even as he steeled himself for what lay ahead, the echo of the desperate cry continued to reverberate from the basement. A constant reminder of the lives imperiled by Martin's machinations. In that moment, Nick's resolve crystallized. There was no alternative but to act, to force his way into the dark underbelly of the hospital and confront whatever horror lay hidden within. Yet, Martin's words continued to haunt him. "If you yield even an inch to the enemy," Martin warned, "then you have already lost." It was a stark ultimatum, a challenge that Nick could not afford to ignore. He knew that his strength lay in his unwillingness to compromise, in his readiness to stand up to the twisted ambitions of those like Martin. And so, with a defiant glare and a steely resolve, Nick refused to be cowed. He would not allow his enemy's rhetoric, no matter how venomous, to force him into submission. There was no room for hesitation or self-doubt, not when every passing moment brought the possibility of further violence and more lives at stake. As the confrontation teetered on the brink of violence, Nick's mind raced with strategies. Every plan, every thought was dedicated to ensuring that the cries for help would not go unanswered. The abandoned hospital might have been a place of death and despair in the past, but tonight, Nick was determined to transform it into a stage for redemption. In his eyes, every secret Martin clutched so tightly was a liability that threatened the very fabric of justice in Genoa. The standoff between Nick and Martin was not simply a clash of wills, it was a battle for the soul of the night itself. With the specter of the white pickup truck looming in the background and the echoing cries from the basement urging him onward, Nick understood that yielding to fear or submission would be tantamount to defeat. "I'm not afraid of you," he declared, his voice resonating with the power of conviction. "I will always fight for the truth, for those who cannot fight for themselves. If you stand in my way, then be prepared to face the consequences." His words were not merely a promise, they were a declaration of war against the tyranny of secrets and the darkness that threatened to engulf them all. In that decisive moment, with Martin's false identity and grand deceptions laid bare, Nick prepared to make his next move. The confrontation was far from over, and the abandoned hospital held many more secrets that Nick was determined to uncover. With every fiber of his being geared toward the rescue of Phyllis, Sharon, and the unknown soul crying for help, Nick braced himself for the inevitable clash. He would not back down. He would not yield to the malevolent force that Martin represented. For in this deadly game of survival and subterfuge, Nick knew that the only way to win was to stand firm, no matter how horrifying the enemy or how treacherous the ground beneath his feet. And so, as the cold night deepened around them, the stage was set for a final, brutal confrontation, a battle where courage would be tested, where every secret would be forced into the light, and where the fate of the innocent hung in the balance. Nick's unyielding determination would be the beacon in the darkness, guiding him through the perilous maze of deception and bloodshed that lay ahead. In this moment, there was no turning back. The truth, no matter how terrifying, had to be confronted, and Martin's web of lies would soon unravel under the relentless force of justice. Martin had meticulously prepared for this confrontation, every detail, every contingency arranged, ever since a crazed intruder with a morbid fascination for the cemetery had stormed the premises. That mad presence had sparked Martin's determination, And now, in the oppressive gloom of the abandoned hospital's depths, the stage was set for a brutal clash. In the dim light of the crumbling corridor, Nick's knuckles collided with Martin's jaw in a savage punch. The impact reverberated through the silence as Martin staggered back, only to recover quickly with a snarl. Without pause, the two men lunged at one another, their bodies colliding in a frenzied melee. They grappled violently, choking and slamming each other against the cold, graffiti-scarred walls of the corridor. The sound of fists and the grunts of exertion filled the air, punctuating the intensity of the moment. "Where are Sharon and Phyllis?" Nick demanded between blows, his voice edged with fury and desperation. "Why are you the kidnapper? You will never be forgiven for this." His words cut through the chaos like a razor, laden with the anguish of betrayal and the weight of justice long denied. Amid the turmoil, a heart-wrenching cry echoed from deeper within the labyrinthine basement. Sharon, overcome with terror and sorrow, had been trapped down there with Phyllis. Her voice, laden with despair, tried to pierce the cacophony of the fight. Yet, the harder she screamed for help, the more her cries seemed to be swallowed by the oppressive darkness, as if the very walls were conspiring to silence her pleas. As the struggle between Nick and Martin reached fever pitch, Alan, whose presence had always been shrouded in mystery and unpredictable theatrics, suddenly slumped to the ground, fainting in a dramatic display that shocked everyone. Yet, those who knew him well recognized this as just another one of his cunning ruses. His apparent collapse was part of a carefully crafted charade, meant to distract and confuse his adversaries at a critical moment. Meanwhile, as the fight raged on, Billy moved with determined purpose through the maze-like corridors of the derelict building. With Nick still locked in combat with Martin, Billy assumed the vital role of a searcher, methodically checking each room for any sign of Sharon and Phyllis. The stakes were staggering, and every second counted. Nick's knuckles were bruised and bloodied from the exchange, and even as he fought, he knew that the rescue mission for the kidnapped women could not wait. Amid the melee, the atmosphere was thick with tension and unspoken threats. Martin, under the false pretense of his assumed identity and fueled by his own dark ambitions, sneered at Nick's relentless inquiries. His eyes, cold and calculating, flickered with a dangerous resolve as he deflected the interrogation with evasive, half-truths. But Nick was unyielding. The echoes of Sharon's desperate cries and the certainty that time was running out spurred him on. The confrontation was more than a physical clash, it was a battle for the soul of the forsaken building, a struggle between the forces of darkness and those who dared to fight for the truth. As Nick and Martin grappled, their conflict symbolized a deeper war of loyalties and betrayals. The abandoned hospital, once a mere relic of past tragedies, now pulsed with the promise of imminent reckoning. Nick's voice, rough with exertion and anger, rang out once more, "You're going to answer for every life you've ruined, Martin." His challenge was met with a twisted smile from Martin, who, in his arrogance, underestimated Nick's determination. The furious exchange escalated until the sound of crashing bodies against ancient, crumbling walls and the echo of distant screams melded into a symphony of chaos. With the relentless duel still unfolding, Nick signaled to Billy, a silent nod confirming that it was time to split up and search every nook and cranny of the labyrinthine structure. The plan was simple yet perilous: find every room, locate Sharon and Phyllis, and secure their safety, all while contending with the unpredictable nature of their adversaries. Despite the chaos, Nick knew that this confrontation wasn't just about brute force. It was a test of will and resolve. His heart pounded not only from the physical exertion but also from the realization that every moment of hesitation could cost an innocent life. Even as his muscles burned with fatigue and every bruise told a tale of the fierce battle, his resolve never wavered. He was determined to see justice done, even if it meant walking through hell itself. As the corridors stretched out before him, shrouded in shadows and silence, Nick steeled himself for what lay ahead. Each door he opened, every darkened room he inspected, could hide another threat or, more importantly, a cry for help. With Billy by his side, he moved cautiously yet resolutely, prepared for whatever dangers awaited in the unknown recesses of the building. The night was far from over. Martin's fierce presence still lingered like a malignant force, and the ghostly echoes of past tragedies seemed to whisper warnings from every corner. Nick's journey through the abandoned hospital was more than a rescue mission. It was a descent into a realm where trust was a fragile illusion and every secret held the power to shatter lives. In that moment, as he passed yet another doorway and the stale air of the forgotten basement greeted him, Nick vowed to himself that he would never back down. The white pickup truck and the lives it held captive were symbols of a corruption that could no longer be tolerated. And as he pressed forward, ready to confront any danger, even if it meant walking through a night filled with bloodshed and betrayal, Nick's determination burned brighter than ever. There was no turning back. With every step, every heartbeat, and every cry that echoed in the darkness, he and Billy inched closer to the truth. And although the path was treacherous, Nick was resolved to see it through. For justice, for the innocent, and for the voices silenced by the cruel machinations of those who believed themselves untouchable, he would fight until the very end. This narrative captures the explosive confrontation between Nick and Martin, the desperate search for Sharon and Phyllis in the ominous corridors of the abandoned hospital, and the high stakes of a battle where every moment could be the difference between life and death.